Welcome back. This is Brighter Morning with Bo. I'm Bo Tiwari. We're going to talk now to Dr. Roger Hosein, Senior Lecturer at the University of the West Indies and Head of TEDU at the University of the West Indies, and a well-respected economist in Trinidad and Tobago. Roger, good morning. Is he on? Dr. Hosein, good morning. How are you?
Morning, good.
I had discussed with you talking about the IMF Article 4 preliminary report, and since then the Moody's report has also come out. So I want to speak to that, and I'm going to actually read from elements of the IMF report and ask you to comment. Okay? Because I want to keep this discussion very focused on what the report says and what it doesn't say. I must say, I don't know if we can talk generally before. In reading the IMF report, the Article 4 report, now this is the first report that we've had since 2018 when the last consultation was held. So we had no report in 2019 because there was no visit. We had no report in 2020 because there was no visit. And then we had basically a virtual engagement of the Ministry of Finance and stakeholders within Trinidad and Tobago society by the IMF, and they put together this report. When I read the report, though, the tone of the report is very supportive of the country and the government's efforts. But when you take the subtext of the IMF report, there are many matters that are worrying and troublesome. Would you care to comment on that?
So, thank you very much for the invitation, Dr. Tiwari. What I would say is this. I would say that first, it's good to have the IMF visiting and giving their frank, honest, independent assessment of the Trinidad and Tobago economy, so that data that we may find it difficult at times to get access to in a timely manner is now in the public domain. That's one. Two, the IMF report indicated that for 2022, we expect 5.7% growth. That's fantastic news because we haven't seen growth for about 6 years, so we welcome that.
Can I stop you there? Where you think that is realistic, and where is that growth going to come from?
Yeah, I'm going to comment on that. And that's first thing I want to do is to say, even if we had gotten 0.25% growth, 0.25%, I would have been thankful, because you can feel the tension on the street. So at least I play football still in the community. I can feel and see the tension in the streets from a 20% fall in per capita GDP. And I live in the fence line of Petrotrin, so
Yes.
of the former Petrotrin company, so I understand it well. Now, the growth, however, is premised largely on changes in the energy sector. And this has me concerned. And it has me concerned because it's almost the same old, same old. When you go back into this abused home, if I may use an analogy, that things would go well after the bus stop for the period of time in which energy prices have a certain amount of buoyancy and energy production have a certain amount of ascendancy. Now, when one looks at the natural gas numbers, and I want to be very careful here, from independent sources, not that quoted by the Minister of Finance, you see a sharp fall of a proportion that given the 98% correlation between real GDP and natural gas production, that it makes you question the 5.7%. Now, even if the 5.7%, let's call it 4%, four is close enough to 5. Even if we get 4% growth in 2022 because of factors beyond our control, like the maturing of natural gas fields that we didn't anticipate, or whatever reason, 4% growth is still very welcome. And the challenge remains, what would happen after the injection of 4% growth in the economy? In other words, what would be the growth in 2023 and 2024? And when you look at the IMF data that was released in October 2021, they have a petering off of growth after 2022. And when you look at the Moody's report, you have a petering off of growth after 2022. Now, that has me concerned, but not surprised. Most people like yourself and people who take this economy very seriously would know that we have serious structural flaws. And the reports, both reports, and I'm dovetailing them, both reports point to the same point, in that they suggest that the structural flaws in the Trinidad and Tobago economy are large and need addressing in a different way and with a faster intensity. And the beautiful thing about these two reports from an analytical point of view is they also dovetail well with the larger World Bank 360 degrees document, which shows that in the context of global warming, the economic resilience of the Caribbean is under threat. And therefore, we have an almost bombardment of this particular economy with several factors converging. The murder level is rising. The COVID deaths are rising. And the structural imbalances in the economy are here. And I appeal to the policymakers. The most we could do is talk, but we should keep talking in the realm of facts and science. And I appeal to the policymakers to increase the speed and the urgency with which we address these structural imbalances in the economy, because in my simplistic view and in my understanding of the facts, these things provide the type of fertile ground for a type of implosion that we don't need at this point in time. And that's my frank, honest view.
Okay. I'll go to something. I'll read something from the IMF report now and something from the Moody's as well. But I want to say the Minister of Finance projected 1% growth for 2021. We are not going to meet that, I am sure. I don't see how that is possible.
Dr. Tuari, if I don't mind interrupting you, he didn't project 1% growth, he projected 1% contraction.
1% contraction. Okay. In other words, an increase in the growth trajectory, but 1%. 1% contraction
in the economy of 1%.
Yes. Okay.
I understand what you mean by the trajectory. Yes.
Yeah. Right. And we have this projection. Now, Moody's itself projects almost 6%, 5.9%. Now, all of that is really based more on oil price and gas price than production, right? Is that correct?
Not all, some. Because we are expecting an increase in production of both commodities in 2022.
Yeah, but that is not going to be sustained. That's part of the problem.
Yes.
You see, and this is part of the problem, which is that it gives a projection that sounds like we're on a good track, without saying what is going to happen after the year is over. But I want to read something here from the IMF report. Now, this is their 10th comment. They've broken up their comments into little snippets, as you know. And the IMF says here, once the recovery firms up, so they are talking about recovery in 2022, a growth-friendly and inclusive medium-term fiscal adjustment plan is essential to reduce public debt and rebuild buffers. Given that energy-related income is volatile and Trinidad and Tobago's energy resources are exhaustible, there is need for the government to rebuild fiscal policy space and ensure adequate savings for future generations. The adjustment needs to contain a mix of tax reforms and expenditure rationalization. Additional revenue could be generated through tax policy reforms and strengthening tax administration. In this regard, the mission welcomed the recent enactment of the gambling tax bill and encouraged the speedy implementation of the property tax and the establishment of the Revenue Authority. On the expenditure side, streamlining transfers to SOEs, improving public spending efficiency, phasing out subsidies, and reforming public procurement and publishing information on the beneficial ownership of public contracts would support fiscal consolidation, enhance transparency and accountability. And then this, I want to read this together with that. The authorities are encouraged to modernize forex and money market infrastructure to reduce inefficiencies and imbalances to support the sustainability of the existing arrangements. Looking to the future, greater exchange rate flexibility would reduce the need for fiscal policy adjustments to restore external balance and create room for more counter-cyclical monetary policy. The mission encouraged the authorities to remove all restrictions on current international transactions while providing sufficient forex to meet demand for all current international transactions. And I want to read this final one. Given the economy's heavy dependence on energy, policies to develop the non-energy sector are critical to support medium-term inclusive growth and enhance resilience in this regard. Reforms to remove obstacles to doing business, improve education and vocational training, to help address skills mismatches and boost productivity and stimulate entrepreneurship will be important. The authorities' recent initiative to support SMEs and their efforts to enhance the transition to digital economy are steps in the right direction. Now, when you take the substance of these pieces, these short pieces, very succinct, very focused, very precise, and the meaning of what they say, I mean, the enormity of the task and the number of things that have to be attended to, I mean, hits one in the face. And we've had a situation in the last 6 years where the deepening recession, which the IMF now confirms, really none or very, very few of these things have been attended to. And we are yet to see what will happen in the SME sector as we open up. But, I mean, what the IMF is really pointing to is that basically if you get a break this year from the price of oil, I am not putting too much emphasis on the production because it is not going to be sustainable beyond the year. But we've gotten a big boost from price, and you get some cash in your hand, basically, you have every single problem that we've had in this economy for the last decade and longer staring us in the face, and we have to do something about it. I mean, where do you see any government policy moving in that direction?
Well, first to begin, let me start off by saying I concur with you. Second, one of the things you read is the need to rationalize expenditure and even cut expenditure. And I heard Minister Imbert clearly say that there is no room to cut expenditure further. So we have started to make the argument that even if you keep the expenditures at 52 billion, change the composition of expenditure so that you cut transfers and subsidies here, let's say by about 7 billion, and you increase capital injections into the economy so that you give the economy
No, go ahead.
a supply capacity response that will help shift the supply curve. Now, all of those things you say there and you read out from the IMF, we know them. The structural flaws in this economy are real and they are there. And the concern is sometimes to me, the politicians portray an all is well narrative. It is not well. And what we take, for example, the labor force participation rate. The labor force participation rate has been going down since 2003. It's now about the third lowest in the Caribbean, if I remember correctly. Where I think there is a little silver lining is with the Ministry of Trade, where they are pushing this specialized economic zone. And the specialized economic zone, from the way I understand it, will give the government some localized advantages in terms of ease of doing business, in terms of specific infrastructure that can attract foreign direct investment in the non-energy export sector. The problem is all of these ideas and thinking have been around for some time. In fact, if I remember correctly, SEPs were even mentioned under your first term as a minister in the now, 1987 to 90. We will have to check that, but that's what I remember. And unless we move from talking about these things and action in them, we would remain having this discussion for the next 10 years. Look at the ease of doing business. One set of talk over the last 5-7 years. And then when you looked at the World Bank number, yes, in 2021 there was some problems, but when you look at the World Bank number, we were just getting a declining performance. So the minds in this country, people like yourself and many other thinkers, including those on the government, they know the problems. What we need is a mechanism that could give results within a 3 months and 6 months period. You know, sometimes when a government come into power, they say they're giving you a 100-day plan, and in a 100-day we would achieve this. I would love to see the Prime Minister tonight change the narrative and the urgency with which matters in this country are looked on, and say for the first 3 months of January, we are going to achieve the following 25 things. And ease of doing business reform, following the template of the World Bank, because the report has now been suspended, but following the same template, which I think is useful, and using our own metric, we put the criteria of improving it 25%. And commissioning and actioning an understanding of why the labor force participation rate is declining and fixing it. Sorting out issues associated with the rise in the homicide level in Trinidad and Tobago in the last 3 months and what could be done. Designing a formula to within a 3 months period to bring the amount of new COVID cases down to 1/10 the level it currently is. And that's the simplistic approach I would take. I would make a bulletin point list. I would form a few groups of responsible people, and they would have to account to me within a 90-day period. And I would chalk things off my list, and then I would probably have an next 100-day plan. But whatever we are doing now, based upon what you read out from the IMF report that we know have been, these structural flaws have been around for many, many years, the long wave planning in the Trinidad and Tobago economy is not working across different governments, and we need a tough leader, a man or woman of business, to deal with things front on and to initiate change in a real way and not in a verbal way.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's too much talk and very, very little action of any merit or value to the structural transformation of this country. I mean, it really becomes very disturbing. For instance, the Minister of Finance is caught up in a quarrel between what the IMF said, which he sees as a positive assessment of Trinidad and Tobago's policy initiatives, and the Moody report, which downgrades the country and points out some of the structural flaws that must be addressed in the society. So he gets into a quarrel about these two differing reports. The last time when Moody's gave their report, he went out of his way to spin the fact that we had not been downgraded. Well, we are now downgraded.
Let me add something, Dr. Tiwan, quickly.
Yeah.
People like me, I don't really read the IMF report. I look at the data at the end of the report.
Well, I read the report because it's important to see how they are, first of all, assessing the data. Secondly, how they are playing the politics with the national government. And thirdly, how they are softening the real blows that they are giving the economy by the use of language. To me, that is important. That is important for assessing the IMF itself as an institution that is meant to be part of the contribution of global governance. So I am not excusing them either.
Yes, you are correct. Okay, I read the IMF report, but what I should say is I pay emphasis to the data.
On the numbers, yes.
And what the data says to you is clean, clear, and rough. But the words above the data in the 3 to 4 pages or whatever, you are correct. It's soft and polite. And soft and polite do not get you out of a 20% decline in per capita GDP.
Yes.
You have to be direct.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand. Anyway, Roger, we've got a break for some commercial messages now. And when I come back, I'll read you something from Moody's and we will talk about that. Thank you very much for being with me this morning. Thank you very much for watching. This is Brighter Morning with Bo. I am Bo Tiwari. And we break now for some commercials.
Welcome to Lifetime Solutions, where you can trust your roof to us. Our services include custom fabrication, steel framing, roofing installation, on-site roll forming, roofing maintenance and services. Call 223-ROOF or 223-7663 for a quote today or visit our website www.lifetimesolutionstt.com. Lifetime Solutions. You can trust your roof to us. Call 223-ROOF or 223-7663 for a quote today, or visit our website www.lifetimesolutionstt.com.
Yeah, welcome back. This is Brighter Morning with Bo. I don't know, this conversation went so fast and there are so many things to discuss. They tell me we have 4 minutes, so I want to quickly read something for you and ask you to comment. I really want you to carry the conversation here. So Moody's said Trinidad and Tobago has a highly negative score on its exposure to environmental, social, governance risks, seemingly mainly due to the environmental risk for oil gas production. Social risks were moderately negative and hardly affected TT's credit profile, although social demands for housing, education, and health services could strain government finances. The influence of governance on TT's credit profile is also moderately negative, reflecting its weak government effectiveness. Despite significant efforts in recent months to improve data reporting, data limitations and institutional constraints limit the government's capacity to execute fiscal policy. Moody's said TT's economic fundamentals, institutions, and governance strength and systematic risk have not fundamentally changed. However, it added, the issuers, that is Trinidad and Tobago's fiscal or financial strength, including its debt profile, has materially decreased. So, I mean, here is an assessment of a deteriorating financial, economic, debt condition in Trinidad and Tobago. And I mean, I don't understand the Minister of Finance's response, and I don't understand the government's non-response to these very, very, what can I say, potent commentaries on the challenges that we face as an economy.
Yes, you are correct. And one of the things that stands out in your mind from what you said here is the institutional problems of data. It is so difficult, Dr. Tiwari, because people like myself, because you are attacked from every angle in this country. Once you start to try to help this country, you try to be robust and scientific in all your commentaries. And without data, you can't really say much or do much. And we really need to inject some life or some additional life into CSO and make this the transformation to the National Statistical Institute that we have been hearing about for so many years. And unless we do that, we would be seeing these type of comments in these international reports for many years to come.
Yeah. If you had to recommend to the government 3 things that they observe, if you had to suggest, you talked about 25 things over the next 3 months or from January for the next 3 months. If you had to tell the Prime Minister to get the country and his government, his Minister of Finance, his Minister of Energy, his Minister of Trade, his Minister of Agriculture, the economic ministers, if you had to tell the Prime Minister get the government to focus on 3 things, what would those 3 things be?
The first one would be to hold the decline in the labor force participation rate. That's going down to ridiculous proportions. I think as we speak, it's about 54%. And in 2003, as I mentioned, it was 62%. The second one I would say is to form a committee and improve the ease of doing business within a 6-month period by 25% from the start of the 6-month period. And the third thing I would say is to accelerate the progression to the specialized economic zone so we can attract some non-energy export financing.
Investment, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The investment thing is also troubling. I mean, we have the announcement of certain hotels and so on. I mean, we are doing all of this and we are under-vaccinated. I don't know how you're going to get people from developed countries in which they have their own problems, but they are highly vaccinated, to come to developing countries and developing islands for tourism when the host population is not vaccinated. I mean, which fool is going to do that if they have to take a holiday? Won't you go into a place where you are relatively protected and in which the population is not a danger to you? So I don't see, you're building hotels, but we have to deal with these realities. I mean, there is a kind of misplaced emphasis and a lack of focus on the things that really matter. I mean, without investment, I don't see how we're getting out of this diversification challenge. So I'll give you the last word of that, and we've got to close.
Right. Yes, Dr. Tiwari, thank you very much for inviting me. And I have another interview at 7, so I have to run off.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you very much for being with us. And
no problem.
Okay. Thank you for watching. This is Brighter Morning with Bo. I am Bo Tiwari. And we move now to Andrew Chan and the 7 o'clock news.